All right, welcome back to the Forfeit Fatherhood podcast, a podcast for fathers by fathers, where we talk about the four pillars of fatherhood, which are faith, family, finance, and fitness. And I'm excited today to have another guest. I told you guys I was going to start having guests again. I know you got tired of hearing me talk and hearing me talk about stuff I want to talk about. So now we get to talk to somebody else, and you guys get to hear somebody else's perspective. Today I have with me Clif Kohut. I'm really excited because this is kind of new. People asking me to be on the podcast is one of the things. When I put it out and people want to be on the podcast, that's exciting, right? It means the things is doing well. But Cliff is the director of operations at Functional Bodybuilding, which I'm sure we're going to talk about because I think, like I said, fitness is one of those important things. And he's also the founder of The Reliable Dad. And if you're not following on Instagram, I'll make sure that we put that out there so you guys can follow him on Instagram. Um, but Cliff, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. I know we talked about what you do, but who is Clif Kohut?
Yeah, well, Rod, first off, thank you for having me on the podcast. When I saw you put out the fillers for guests, I wanted to make sure I could hop on and get to connect with you. I've been able to follow and listen to a few episodes, so just happy to personally be here and get to spread some information about the Reliable Dad and talk to another dad. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited,
So
man. I'm
for
excited.
me, yeah. So for me, I think the simplest place to start is my name is Cliff. I'm a 33-year-old father of two. I've got a 4-year-old girl and a 2-year-old son. I'm married to the love of my life, and my day to day is very much revolved around fitness professionally and personally. So I've been in the fitness industry now almost 15 years. Prior to that, all throughout my youth, my dad was in the fitness industry, ran a couple gyms. I was always a part gymnastics facilities, weightlifting clubs. So it's always been a big time focus for me. And now being a father, it's my focus to keep that in the forefront around the fitness pillar. But as of recently, being as present as I can in this moment, in this phase of life, alongside of the experiences that I've been able to accumulate. You and I talked early on about hey, I've been doing this for 4 years. I've got 4 years worth of reps. You've got a 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. You've got 8 years and 10 years worth of reps of being a father. And I've got some expertise that I can share, especially around fitness. But really just coming back for me, the focus being present and being available in this time, especially as the kids are young. My wife is a stay-at-home mom with them. I work upstairs above our garage, and I get to go downstairs at lunch and hang out with them. And in the morning I get to spend a couple hours with them. In the evening I get to spend a couple more. And my goal is to spend as much time with my kids in this early phase of life as I can, to solidify that relationship and to be able to instill some of the values and teachable moments that I want to make sure that my kids have inside of them as they go off to those next phases of life, which for them are big. It's like elementary school and middle school and all these other things they have coming up. And I just want to make sure that, I get to be the leader for them to help push them along in each phase. So that is where the Reliable Dad comes in, and we can dive into that more later. But yeah, that's me. That's where I'm coming from, and a little bit about Cliff.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. That gives us some context for the conversation. Um, so you have is it a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old? Can you hear me,
Yeah,
Cliff?
2-year-old
Yeah.
son, Andrew, and a 4-year-old daughter, Emma. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So a boy and a girl. Are you guys settled at two, or we going three, or what are we doing here?
I think we're settled at two, man. I think two is enough. Early on we said, hey, we're going for three, maybe even four. My wife really wanted four. I really wanted two. So we settled in the middle at three originally. And then we had our son, 2 years ago. And that was right during and around the COVID time. And we've really settled in with this lifestyle with two kids, with where they're currently at. So I think we're sticking with two for now.
Yeah. Two is like a safe space. Like it's pretty cool with two. Like I have two. We never even thought about three. I think we got to two and we're like, yo, this it's one on one. We could play. You could get one, I can get one, and we could switch off. Play a little defense and we'll be okay. I think the third one would take us out and overpower us. So we got to two and we decided we were done. But people are always asking, like every time they see us out, they're like, "Oh man, you guys are so great with your kids, your family, so this and so that. You should have another one." Or like guys are always like, "When are you gonna have a son?" And I'm like, "Man, I'm good. I found the two kids that I needed to make my life complete, and I'm good with those two. And God willing, something else happens
Yeah,
and
same
something
here.
else
Yeah, we get
happens."
people asking us all the time, especially the grandparents. The grandparents are always asking, "Are there more coming?" And yeah, I think we're happy with two. We're blessed with two healthy, wonderful kids, and yeah, we're just very lucky with where we're at.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's go back in time a little bit. So your daughter's 4 now, so roughly 5 years ago, you find out you're going to be a dad. Um, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so around that time, I was a full time entrepreneur when we first had Emma, when we had our first kid, and I ran my own CrossFit facility in Raleigh, North Carolina, and my sole focus at that time was being a competitive CrossFit athlete and a full time gym owner, and I was juggling those two things while being the best husband that I could be to my wife at the time, and so like now it's oh, we've got this kid coming on, and I started having flashbacks to my childhood in a really good way. Like I had such a supportive, involved father. My both my dad and my mom split up and divorced when I was young, and I love my mom to death, but luckily I was able to be raised by my father, and my father took me in and raised me from the age of 5 until I left the nest at 18. And I couldn't have been more thankful for the childhood that I had, with my dad being the solo parent taking care of me. And I know that's not the story that most people get to say whenever they have a split or divorce. It normally doesn't go that the dad gets the kid and the kid gets raised by the father in the solo household. But I had a great experience, and I, immediately having my first kid, and my wife's pregnant and getting, more and more pregnant, in a very beautiful and amazing way. And as we get closer to she's going to kill me for saying that, but she did. And, we got closer to the due date, and I realized that um, I wanted to be present. I wanted to make sure that I was able to give this beautiful girl the same childhood that my dad was able to give me, and take the pros that I learned from him and take some of the cons and try to improve upon them. But I had a really, really good base to build off of with my relationship that I had with my father, and just know how fortunate and privileged I was to have that and to land in that situation. And I wanted to make sure that, hey, in 18, 20, 25, 30 years, that my kids start having kids, um, hopefully they can say the same thing about me. Like, I had this great dad who was there, who was present, who taught me all the lessons, and I know this thing because of him. And he instilled these 3 or 4 things inside of me that are the primary, you know, um, moral pillars that I live every day on. And so I've got some of those from my dad, and I just want to make sure that I get to kind of pass those along to my kids as well.
Awesome, awesome. Now look, you might be saving those for your kids. So if those are in the vault and you're not passing those out, don't say anything right now. But those of us who didn't have a father who instilled some of those things, what are some of those pillar morals and values that you plan on sharing with your kids?
Yeah, so a lot of these came from my dad's dad, his grandfather, and my dad has always been one of many phrases, as I know most dads are. They've got like their catchphrases that they always have, and a lot of my dad's catchphrases came around lessons to be learned, or whenever lessons were put out there. He was a teacher by heart. He was a coach his entire life. He was a teacher up until he just retired. So he's always led groups of kids. He always knows how to like instill messages and values in them as he coaches them and to grab their attention. So I think his phrases and his mottos were kind of his way to do that. And so, I'll share a couple with you. I won't share them all, but just a couple of them that he always came back to. And where one is, honesty is the best policy. And so when in doubt, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, honesty is the best policy. You have to tell the truth. You should tell the truth, and you should feel motivated to bring that into every interaction that you have, whether that's being 100% genuine in an interaction, or it is spilling the truth when you've got to fess up to something. Honesty is the best policy. And then the other piece that I kind of reflect on daily is everything in moderation, including moderation itself. And so just making sure that you're moderating your lifestyle, whether that's the really positive things that you're doing or when you're relaxing and you're taking a little downtime. Maybe you're on a vacation. Maybe you're just like, hey, I put in enough work today. It is time to just take a little relaxation time at the end of the day. I'm going to, it's 9 o'clock. I want to turn on Netflix. Great. Everything in moderation, right? So you're not going to binge watch 15 shows. You're going to put on a show and watch a show, and you got it out of your system, and then you move on. So just those are the two big pillars that right now, kids are young. They're not really grasping those concepts too much right now. But the 4-year-old and 2-year-old, yeah, fessing up with honesty is big. And then kind of teaching them moderation when they really need things, right? They need that extra episode of Bluey, or they need that extra hour of tablet time. Trying to instill those values as best as we can early on with things like the tablet and the shows.
Yeah, I like that. So I've heard everything in moderation. I haven't heard that second part of it, even moderation. That's a good one. Because I think we hear the everything in moderation, and that just means to us to like limit the amount of things we do. But even in the limiting, there should be some limits, right? Like you have to allow yourself to have some freedoms to be able to do the things that recharge you or kind of give you the energy to continue going forward. So I like that, man. I might have to use that. I might have to use that.
Take it, man. Take it. Take it. Yeah, it's a good one. And yeah, that extra step of moderating your moderations will keep you in check when you're like, okay, I'm just doing this to take a little me time, or I'm just doing this in this very, limited fashion because maybe I'm afraid to go all in. Well, it's like, wait a second. Yes, you need to moderate, but you need to moderate your moderation as well. And know sometimes it is okay to go all in. Like you've got, for you with the Forfeit Father podcast and Fatherhood, channel in your business, like you had to go all in on that at some point in time. And if you just moderated your involvement and just kind of did it for a while, it probably would have never grown to where it is now, or in the future where you wanted to be if you're always like, half in or just kind of halfway pushing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was looking at some old content that I have from, I think last year, just looking at stuff because I'm going to be traveling. So looking at stuff to maybe repurpose or repost. And I saw something that said that, it kind of is similar to that is like, it's easier to be 100% in than 99%. Because when you're 100% in, you're fully committed. You don't give yourself those options to lay back or relax. 99% gives you two things. One, it gives you choices. Like you can choose to push a little harder or you can settle for 99%. Or you're always chasing that 1%. So you never get to the point where you feel comfortable and confident in what you've done. You're always chasing it. So I like that. I like the moderating the moderation, and that's awesome, man. I'm definitely gonna I'll make sure to mention you though. Like I won't just steal it straight up and be like, yo, this is like I made it up. No, I'll be like Clif's dad said, and then in quotations, right?
No, yeah, don't quote me. Quote the OG, Papa Kohut. I'll make sure you get his handle too.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay, so that's really cool. You mentioned CrossFit, and I'd be remiss. My brother would get on me if I didn't say anything. My brother, I don't know what he's not doing much of it now because he's in Malaysia, and actually I'm gonna be visiting him over the next couple of weeks. But he was a part-time CrossFit coach while he was working out in Michigan, and his wife is a competitive CrossFitter. She's kind of slowed down because they just had a baby. Well, not just had a baby; he's 2 now, but it's kind of slowed down through the pregnancy, but picked back up, and we're right back to competing. So he if he heard the podcast and he heard you missing CrossFit and me not mention him, I'd probably get a text or a phone call like, bro, like shout me out. So shout out to my brother Phil, his wife Tracy. She is a beast. She makes me feel bad. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, but every time I see her or I see videos of her competing, I'm always like, Jesus Christ, man, did you like, never mind. Like, I don't even want to see you work out. Like, don't post the videos. Just stop it. Like, it's cool. All right. I don't care how many muscle ups you can do. Like, it just doesn't matter to me anymore. You can beat me. It's cool. Like, it's already bad enough that my brother is bigger, stronger,
Yeah.
faster than me. But now you are just going to rub it in, huh? Like the super family.
Yeah, and the CrossFit athletes, I mean, just yeah, just the most well-rounded athletes out there, in my opinion. Just being, especially competitive CrossFitters, doing the Olympic lifts the way they do it. I'm still very close with that community in my day to day that I do with functional bodybuilding, and obviously have deep connections with the gym that I used to own. I sold that business, but still very connected with that group, and that gym is still thriving in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, let's talk about fitness, man, because I think I obviously think it's one of the most important or one of the more important things for fathers to be paying attention to. But obviously you having connection in fitness, and then your father being involved in it, and kind of it being the through line of your life. What's the importance, in your opinion, of fitness and fatherhood? Like, what's the best, or what's the connection, I guess?
Yeah, I think the connection is, in my opinion, again, I am very biased from my perspective. Again, like you said, I've been in health and fitness my entire life. That's what my dad did. Those were the values that he instilled in me. I invested and was a part of this business that was CrossFit and, everything around fitness, health, nutrition, and working out. So my opinion is it is the base for everything. And it's the base because it's what keeps this physical body alive and as present as possible for as long as possible. And so if I am I am fit, I'm healthy, I'm eating well, whether it's hereditary, the combination of hereditary and then also the inputs that I put in on a daily basis, if I can be fortunate enough to not have chronic diseases, diabetes, health disease, heart disease, strokes, all those things that impact people and their longevity in life, I want to be here as long as I can as a father. I got blessed to be a father in 2018, and I want to make sure that 2018 hyphen goes on as long as it can into the future. And I know that if I'm not paying attention to my health and fitness and doing those things in a way that promotes longevity, then I'm not coming back to the core value, which is like I want to be the best dad and the most reliable dad I can for as long as possible. And if it's up to me and I have some things that are inside of my control, like exercise output and nutrition input, I'm going to do my best every day to maximize both of those. So I want to make sure that my physical output is pushing longevity, making me healthier, making my biomarkers that I'm going to check in with my doc every year during my annual physical look better and better and better every year, or at least be able to plateau as I get older and not let them decrease as most people do. And then also the nutritional inputs, making sure that every decision that I'm making when I am putting something in my body, that is the best thing for me to be here as long as possible. And I think we all have days when we skip the workout. We all have days when we eat the cookie, and we all have days when we do things that we shouldn't, for sure. But it's just making sure that you have a good understanding around nutrition, health, and fitness to make good decisions long term. Because we all want to be, anybody that's a father wants to be the best father they can for as long as they can.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think kind of like a second hand thing too is like when you are taking care of your health and fitness, when you're eating healthy and you're at least putting your health as a priority, a trickle down effect is like your kids see that and then they do that, right? And so they have a better quality of life. And so that's like on the last episode, or I think it was the last episode, I talked about legacy and how things that you leave behind. That's one of those things where it's extremely valuable, right? Like if you leave behind your bad eating habits or your bad health habits, then your kids don't get to have the long life that you want them to have. And so I agree, man. I think the health and fitness piece, obviously, again, I'm biased too. But the health and fitness piece is extremely important. And I think a lot of guys miss that, right? Like we're guys. Like I was talking to my dad this past weekend, and he was like, "When's the last time you went to the doctor?" This is old man conversation, right? Like, when's the last time you went to the doctor? And I'm like, where'd that come from? Like, we're just talking about the doctor,
Yeah.
and I was like, it's been probably, yeah, but it's been like 6 months since I've been, and he's like, "Yo, you need to schedule an appointment. Schedule. I don't know what's wrong with you. Schedule an appointment." And I'm like, "Okay, man." He's like, "You pay for it, you should go. You go every 3 months." He's like, "Because if you get sick and you wait 6 months sick," he was like, "it's not gonna get better. Like you may not even know when you're 6 months into the sickness." So he's like, "You should be going more often." Um, I'm like, "Dude, I'm healthy or whatever," but
Yeah.
it's important. It's important for us to take those doctor visits, but then also to manage our fitness on our own. And it doesn't have to be CrossFit Games level fitness, right? You don't have to be the fittest man on earth, right? Right? You just need to be making sure that you take care of your fitness somewhat daily, and then make sure you're eating healthy, like you said. So if you love fatherhood, you want to be a father for as long as you possibly can. So that piece is really important.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you hit on something early on around being a good role model. That's where it started for me. And I know that's going to be an impact on my kids. Like for me, I followed my dad around. I don't know if you remember the old school Nautilus gyms that had like the circuits that you would follow. You would go through and hit the circuit training, make sure you hit the different muscle groups. I remember being 10, 11, 12, following my dad through those gyms and just, I would pull the pin for him. He'd be doing a drop set and, he would do his first 10. I'd pull a pin, put it back in, and then I would follow him along as he was doing his hamstring curls, as he was doing his pec flies, as he was doing his dips. And I got to see him, one, be disciplined in this thing that was important to him, which was fitness. And I got to be a part of that. And I wanted to be a part of it. And I got to see how it affected his life and his, day to day as a gymnastics coach and as a gym owner. It was a big part of his livelihood to be healthy and to be fit long term, for that. And then the other piece that you mentioned, around, you don't have to be the fittest on earth. You don't have to squat 4 plates. You don't have to do these things that are so intense, which as men, and I'll pick on men for a little bit. I know women do it as well, but men specifically go into the gym and you start ego lifting or you start looking at the leaderboard and everybody wants to be the top dog or the alpha dog. And that's cool, but that's not going to create longevity. And I think that, again, as a father, you have to come back to what's going to keep me around for the longest period of time. And you know what? Blowing out your knee because you tried to squat what you squatted in high school just isn't going to cut it if you did that before summer and now you can't go to the kids' softball games or help them train. Like, you got to keep it all in perspective. You got to know why you're training and keep that as your primary focus while you're starting a new fitness routine, continuing one, or even trying to progress as an individual. And if your livelihood is to be a competitive athlete, then you've got another pillar there where it's like, okay, this is how I'm paying the bills, this is how I'm paying the mortgage. You're going to have to go all in there. But as far as if somebody that's a desk jockey or works behind a computer like me, I don't need a fitness related injury to sideline me from my day to day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about your new venture, right? Let's talk about the reliable dad, but let's talk about the name. How'd you come up with the name? I think that's a kind of a cool name. So where'd you get that from? Why reliable?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I feel like, for any business venture that I've been on personally, I'll speak for myself, the naming of it has always been the hardest part. Whether it's like I find something and then it already exists somewhere else, or it just doesn't have the right ring to it, or it doesn't encompass what I'm trying to do. And so I landed on the reliable dad because I kept coming back to this. What do I want to be? What do I want to be at the end of the day, at the end of this journey that is life? What do I want to have be the definition of me if I could put it in a quick tagline? And, you know, if somebody called me reliable, like that is awesome. And if my kids can say that I was a reliable dad, then that would be even better. And so that's how I landed on the reliable dad. And then that further kind of encompassed everything that, was the reason for starting this, which was to promote intentional presence, to promote being with your kids as much as you can in as high quality and impactful ways and impactful moments in their lives, depending on where they're at in their journey and their phases of life, and also where you're at in your journey in your phases of life. So that's kind of how we landed on the reliable dad name.
I like that. I like that. I've seen you post about that, the intentional presence piece, and I know we talk about presence. It's just like in the fatherhood community, right? Like all these pages and podcasts that I listen to, we harp on presence and being present. And I've started to get to the point where it's like, okay, we've put our foot in the door, right? We're present now, right? But now that we're present, what's next, right? And I think we've talked a lot of guys to death about being present, but not giving them the next step, right? Once they're in the room, Now what do? It's like telling guys they need to go to the gym, but then not providing them a program to follow. They just go in and like, it's not osmosis. Like we're not just going to get in shape because we walked in the door. We're not just going to be a better. We might be actually, depending on what kind of father we were before we walked in the door. Just being in the door might be enough. But talk to us a little bit about intentional presence, because I think a lot of us have heard the be present, and so now we're like, okay, we're going to limit some of these things and we're going to just be in the room. But there's a difference between being in the room and being present with intention. Um, can you share with us the difference between the two?
Yeah, yeah. And I'll start quickly on where you kind of started on that, which was this like, yeah, if you go into a gym, you've got to have a plan. You have to be intentional with what you're doing there. And just by way of being there, you're going to be better off for your health and fitness is if than if you didn't go in. More than likely. More chances, the chances are better that you're going to be better off physically when you go to the gym versus if you never showed up or you didn't walk to commute to the gym that day. So you have to have a purpose. You have to have some guidance. Like you said, you know, I look at it as you've got these different time blocks during your day. You've got these different tasks and things that you have during the day. You have these different hats that you wear. And whenever you show up somewhere, be 100% in on it. So right now I'm talking to you and I'm 100% on promoting this thing that is the reliable dad. In about an hour, I'm going to go, you know, back to my full-time job and be 100% on that. And I'm only going to be focusing on that. I'm going to do the best job that I can there and over deliver in those areas based off of the guidance that I had from my employer. And then in about 2 hours after that, I'm going to sign off for the day and I'm going to put all my distractions aside and be as present as I can with my kids. And so that's where we go into intentional presence. And that is, yeah, no one's really told you what you got to do as a dad, but I think that we all know that we have to be leaders. I think that we all know that we have to, and we get the opportunity to present these different and provide these different values to our kids to follow and to emulate and to coach them and to teach them. And we only have a little bit of time, you know, early on, we have a good amount of time. And as we go through life, we get a little bit less. And just making sure that when we have those moments with the kids, it doesn't always have to be a lecture. There's a lot of time for play. There's a lot of time for fun. There's a lot of time for the daily tasks that we do, like morning routine and bedtime routine and eating meals. But just making sure that we're making each one of those moments focus in on what it should be. When it's mealtime, we're all sitting down together. We're enjoying that time together. When it's time for us to play and maybe get better at baseball or softball, then that's what we're focusing on that time. So just being all in that moment, having a reason, having a purpose for what you're doing. And yeah, you can't put everything into a tight confined box and define it all, but doing your best to do so, I think is a good approach. You know, there's some time that you can block off for free time and a little bit of playtime. Absolutely do that, but I think having a reason and purpose for each hour, each task that you're doing with your kids and scheduling it out is very important.
Yeah, yeah. So for the guys who are just, you know, we just got our foot in the door being present, how do you manage to be intentional about your time? Are you scheduling it? Are you using the calendar, or do you just kind of know that I have an hour and then just whatever happens during that hour? Like how are you doing it?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So this is where I always lean on like, hey, I'm the 33-year-old dad, father of two. I've got a very flexible job that allows me to work from home. I've got minimal commuting time. My kids are young, they're at home. So it's easier for me to be a little more flexible with my schedule right now. And I know as I get older, as my kids get older, we're really gonna have to structure that time as best we can. But right now, the time blocks kind of just come naturally around the things that me and my wife want to achieve on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. So if she needs to go head off to work in the evening, she's a gymnastics coach, then great. I know I'm going to have 3 hours dedicated to hanging out with my kids. I could sit inside and continue to work and throw them, you know, on the TV, or I could say, great, we've got this opportunity to we live close to the beach, to go to the beach and hang out, to go to the skate park. We just started kicking that off and like learning the balance bikes and doing ramps and just making sure that, you know, again, the time that I get to spend with them, I have some purposeful, you know, items planned out. For me, it's generally on just a weekly basis. I'll look ahead and just see, okay, I've got Monday afternoon with the kids. Let's go to the skate park. I've got Tuesday afternoon with the kids. Let's go to the beach. I've got Wednesday afternoon. Let's stay at home and let's do an activity. Again, they're young, so it's pretty simple for me to come up with some activities to keep them occupied and to teach them some lessons. But I'm up for that journey of making those items and those activities a little more diverse and challenging over time. But with the 4-year-old and 2-year-old now, it doesn't take too much to keep them occupied.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny is as they get older, it seems like they need more to be occupied, but they don't, right? Like it's just if you take the time, like you said, we're gonna go to the skate park, right? As they get older, they just need less prompts from you, right? Because when they get to the skate park, they're like, okay, I know what I want to do. Like I want to hit this ramp, I want to do this, I'm gonna do that, and so they're just like taking cues from you, but they already have a plan, right? Right now, you have to be the plan. You have to say, oh, let's go hit this ramp, or let's try this, or let's try that. So it kind of gets easier. The part that gets different, and this is from my experience, and it may be different for other people. It probably is, right? That's the way the world works. Is they get more stuff on their schedule, right? Because they, like you said, they start going to school and then they, eventually have homework and they have extracurricular activities. And so you have to be a little more crafty about how you get that time. But I think it goes back to scheduling, right? Everything I try to, as much as I can, I try to schedule everything um, the week before, right? Or maybe 2 weeks before if I'm lucky, because that way I can look forward, like you mentioned, look forward to the week and go, okay, I've got these time blocks. What can I do with that? Like, what fun thing can I do, or what enriching thing can we do, or what? Maybe we just go and we just hang out and have a burger, like we just talk, right? Because my oldest daughter, she loves hamburgers. I guess she got that from me. And so, we'll just let's go to a burger place and we'll just sit down and we'll have burgers and fries and let's just talk. Like, what's going on? What's happening at school? Just normal conversation, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. I don't have to be coach dad. I don't have to be like teaching life lessons dad. I don't have to be like, I just get to be Rod for a second and she gets to be herself and we just talk about, whatever. Or if there's something on the TV and while we're in there, like I think we went, what was that, Thursday or Friday? Because my youngest, they both act as well. So my youngest had a commercial shoot, and they can only have one parent on set. So my wife went this time, and so me and my oldest went and got a burger, and the Dodgers were on. It was the Dodgers and somebody, and she was talking about one of the guy's hair, and it's like his hair is so long, and we're just hanging out, like just like it was me and one of the fellas just hanging out having a burger and a soda. Like I don't even drink soda, but I had like a Coke Zero, and she had like a root beer float, and like we were just hanging out. Um, but that's one of those things where I think that time sometimes gets missed, right? Because it's just like a random block of time. He's like, all right, well, we're just gonna chill at home, and you can just go watch the TV show you like, and I'm gonna go to my quote unquote man cave and do my thing because I need to decompress. But I think that time is better spent if you can look forward and find, okay, this is what I can do, or this is what we can do, and we can kind of enrich each other. Because I felt really good after it, right? Like I did it for her, but like shoot, I had a good time. Like I enjoyed it, and so I think we as fathers do need to look at the schedule a little bit, find those times where we can be different versions of ourselves, right? And really enjoy the time that we get with them.
Yeah, and I think it's the intention around it, right? It's like you had that block of time, and yep, you could have gone off to the man cave. She could have gone off to the tablet and engaged there, but it was the purpose behind like, hey, I want to spend time with you. Let's go do this. Let's go have a meal. Let's engage. Let's communicate. And that's all it needed to be was just, hey, I'm choosing you, my daughter, over everything else right now. And I just want to spend time with you. I just want to engage with you. And you don't have to say all those things, but your action of, taking the car and driving to the restaurant or driving to where you guys went to go have that moment, was impactful. And I remember those moments as a kid with my dad when, yeah, I was me, as the son, I was chosen over other things. And just that act of being chosen over the other things that could come up are, some of the more impactful moments that you have as a kid. And that's another pillar here for the intentional presence is just being purposeful with that. And like, hey, I'm choosing you over that, and your action and how you're doing it promotes that. And it's very, very obvious to them and they can feel it.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely can, man. They're very aware of energy, right? Like even little kids, right? They're aware of energy and attention because those are the two things. Energy, attention, and love are like the three things that little kids are always looking for, and they're very aware when they're not getting it. right? Especially like the younger they are, all they want is your
Yep.
attention, right? They just want you to hold them, they want you to play with them, they want you to look at them. Like that's why they're always saying dad, dad, dad. Like they want to show you stuff, or they want to talk to you about stuff, or they're tapping you, or they just want your attention. And that doesn't really go away. They just learn when you're going to give them attention and when you're not, or if you're going to give them attention and or if you're not. And they just start finding it other places, right? And then they start giving their attention to other things because they're not getting that reciprocating attention, right? They're not getting that energy back from you, so they start moving on to other things. And a lot of times people talk about older kids, they don't listen to me anymore, they don't want to hang out with me anymore, or they don't want to, they don't want to hang with dad anymore, I'm too old or I'm not cool. And I always think, man, like that might be true. You might not be a cool, because to a teenager, you're not that cool. Like just to be completely honest. But when you're giving them interest and you're interested in the things that they're interested in, they don't mind you being around. They don't mind you hanging out. Like they don't mind you telling dad jokes. They're like, yo, it's not funny, but he cares and he's hanging out with me, so I'm cool with it. But when you kind of are giving them that like wall, which I think a lot of us give because we don't share our emotions and we're stoic and we're tough and we have to be that sometimes. Kids learn, dad's not going to give me that energy, so I'm going to go somewhere else and with my energy and get it from somewhere else or do it somewhere else. And I think we have to be aware of that. I think a lot of us miss that we're losing that attention because we're not giving that attention.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. So I was gonna kind of go back into the reliable dad. We got the kind of the gist of why you created it, the name. But where are you directing that to? Where are we going with that?
Yeah. So right now we're still very early on. I put this out to the universe, little over 2 weeks ago, so still very early on. But this has been an idea, obviously, since I became a dad, but more solidified in January of this past year. I've had some life events that happened on my end that really just made me want to start writing down some of my thoughts and opinions and perspectives on this phase of life that I'm in with my kids. And I started compiling this, some of it was, my opinion was just scribbles and gibberish. And then other things started falling into fully formed thoughts that as I started connecting with other dads around, like it either started resonating with them or I was learning from them. So I was like, this would be a great opportunity for me to put these thoughts out into the universe in this thing that will be the Reliable Dad blog and newsletter. So I have people subscribing to that right now. And the hope is that I can share content specifically for me. Again, it's an opinion based, it's my perspective, it's where I'm at in my phase of life and some of the lessons that I've learned that I either want to share with dads that are in my phase of life as a dad or in their phase of fatherhood that I'm in, maybe coming up on that and they can learn from it. And then for other dads that are beyond that to be able to reflect on that and see what they could take from it where they're at. So that's one leg of this. I want to make sure that I can push out those perspective and thoughts. And then the other side of it is to be collaborative. I want to hear from and connect with other dads and other fathers that are making presence a big focus for them and how they are, striving to be as present as possible. They're striving to be fit for long-term health and longevity. They're striving to be great professionals and wherever they're at, whether it's an entrepreneur, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever their profession is, they're striving to be as great as they can be there. And then on the other side of things, on the wealth component, making sure that they have focus there as well to ensure longevity and make sure that their family is supported long term. So that's the collaborative aspect of it, that I don't want to be just the guy sharing my opinion. I want to be the father that's sharing my opinion on things and also being collaborative with others. One, selfishly, so I can learn. I'm very curious. I want to continue to learn from others and make myself better, but also for other fathers to be able to share their perspective and to be able to relate to other fathers that are out there, because not everybody's going to relate to my message and how I present it and my background, and that's a-okay. But I don't want that to be the blocker that is, spreading the word of being reliable, of being present, of being healthy, of being wealthy for your family as a father. And there are people like yourself out there doing it already. And, to be collaborative with other big names in the industry is great. but also help other dads that want to come up and share their perspective, is really where I'd like to lean into with the Reliable Dad long term. So hopefully hopefully a long form podcast and some video content for people to be able to engage with, whether that's on YouTube or via podcast would be a great way for us to start that.
Yeah. You know what? It seems like it seems like there's a bunch of people once you get into a niche or once you get into an industry, your reticular activating system is turned on. So that's all you see, right? And it seems like, oh, everybody's doing this and everybody's doing that. It's not really the case. And even if it was, right, your perspective, your individual take on it is going to resonate with somebody a way that mine wouldn't, right? And the way that I talk about it or the way that I describe it or my situation, my journey is going to be different than how you bring it up or how you perceive it, how you address it. So there's plenty of room, man. And I'm excited. I didn't realize how early in it was for you. But I'm excited to see where the growth goes, like what you do next. I'm really excited to see what the Reliable Dad becomes. And I'm glad to have had you on early in the process, because when we come back to this thing in 3 months, 6 months, a year, and I'm like, oh man, did you see Clif on on what is the I don't even watch TV. What are like the shows that are on? I don't even know what they are anymore. Good Morning America or something. Like it's one of those shows. Like, oh man, Cliff was talking about fatherhood on Good Morning America. And then I gotta,
That's one of them
you
for
know,
sure. That one's still got to be around.
yes, it's got to be right. And then I'll go back and find this clip, and I post it, and like, oh, Cliff, alumni Cliff, he was on. Yeah, so I'm excited, man, because I think anybody that's taking their fatherhood serious is an important person in this world, because you have an opportunity to change the world in your household with the people of your household, and those people go out and affect other people in the community. And I think that's how we do it. I don't think there's one person that can just go like, Thanos and snap their fingers and change the world like that. But I think if each one of us kind of carries our load and helps build a solid group of people inside our house, that group of people can go out and network market good for the rest for the rest of the world, hopefully. That's what I'm hoping
absolutely.
to do.
And that's what it's all about for me, is just creating those connections with other dads, obviously forming the strong family unit that I can as the father and as the leader of my family, but then also, connecting with other leaders of other families, and just, again, you said it earlier, I said it earlier, just knowing that my voice isn't going to resonate with everybody, but if we're connected to other voices and other opinions and other perspectives, and we can communicate, we can talk about those things, we can have these open discussions where, I can lean really heavily on fitness, and then maybe I connect or collaborate with some other dad that's like, real estate and wealth and passive income is everything in order for you to be the best dad possible. Then we can connect with that individual and take some lessons learned from them, and know that, hey, there's a little balance here, there's a little give and take, and there's always a differing perspective and something to take from that.
100%, 100%. You mentioned fitness, and we kind of talked about it really early in the podcast, never really got back to it, but the functional bodybuilding, that's something you do online, right?
Yeah. So functional bodybuilding, I've been fortunate enough to work for this company for about 2 years now. But it's ran by founder Marcus Philly, who's a great father in and of himself. And he's got 2 young kids and a family that he takes care of. And really, I actually just talked to him a couple days ago about this, was that he was a big inspiration for me to actually open up and go into this thing that was the Reliable Dad, because I, again, got to collaborate with him, have got to learn from him and see him and engage with him in the business that he's created. So functional bodybuilding online training program that's based with some group training. You can follow the training online, or you can hire a coach and get some coaching around nutrition, around physical fitness. If you're just starting your fitness journey, that's usually like one of the more ideal ways to start. Like we talked about earlier, like you can show up to the gym with an app on your phone, but unless you're really in it and you can engage, sometimes those things are hard to engage with. For the program that we have, we've got as much advice as we can put in there to make it still easy for you to engage with and move through and learn. But some people will like that additional coaching support, so we offer that as well, so people can engage with the coach or just with the program.
I like that. I like that. I think a lot of people, especially guys, man. When I talk to guys, or ladies too, right? But ladies don't really listen to the podcast, so I'm talking to guys. There's always this feeling of like I've got to get in shape to go get in shape, right? Like I'm not ready yet to get to the gym, next week or next Monday, or I'm gonna start next month. And there's always like this, like getting ready to go to the gym, and a lot of that is fear based. But I think when you have a coach or you have a program, like I said before, walking in that door, you got your foot in, but now you got something to follow and something to engage with, and something that kind of shows you what to do and how to do it. I think it sets you up for success. And I think one of the things in fatherhood that we miss is like we don't really get a program. Like there's no coach, there's no fatherhood coach, there's no program, there's no one really telling you how to be a father unless your dad does. And a lot of our dads, I know my dad never had the fatherhood conversation with me. He talked to me about manhood and things like that, but he never said, hey, when you become a father, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, or this is what you need to do as a father. He showed me him being a father, and then when I come to him with fatherhood questions, he's like, oh, see, yeah, I could have told you that. Well, you didn't. You didn't really you didn't really lay those out for me, man. You don't wait for me to come to you with the questions. Like you could have just said that before, but that's not necessarily something we do. And so I think that that's one, it's really cool for fitness because a lot of people are lost there. But two, something that this podcast and social media and your content, I think is kind of that roadmap for people, for fathers to kind of find their way without stumbling. So I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's really cool that what you're doing, what you're building. Like I said, I'm super excited to see where it goes. Again, I'm gonna tell people I know you, um, and I'm excited,
I
man.
appreciate it,
I'm
Rod. Yeah,
excited.
yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, man. It's been a great
Of
conversation. Yeah.
course. Of course. Before we hop off though, I do have two questions for you. Well, three technically, but two questions.
Mhm.
One of them, it's a fatherhood podcast, a podcast for fathers and by fathers, and so I'm curious to know from you, because I ask this on every episode, but I feel like I get a little bit of a different response each time. So I'm curious to know what you think. Um, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Well, I've got this fresh on the brain because I just put out redid some content around this, and I've had this thought in my head on what does fatherhood mean, and I think if you're going to define it purely, it's the state of being a father, and when I think about state, I go into like this chemistry, state of matter, liquids and gases. I mean, I go down that route, but for fatherhood, I think it is how can you balance all of these inputs that you're going to have that are going to create your different states of who you are as a father, right? It's like, how can I handle the external stresses of finance, of relationship, spiritual, mental, marital, physical stressors that come onto my life? And how can I filter those? One, to be a better individual, solve those problems as I can, but to present myself as dad with those inputs coming into me. So I've got all those inputs coming in on a daily basis that affect my mood, who I am, how I can interact with other people, the time that I have during the day, depending on what's coming up, and how do I get to present myself to my kids. So that's what, fatherhood means to me is like how can I filter everything that's coming in to me as dad, and then what does that allow me to present myself to my kids? And not that I have to filter and vet everything from them and put on this mask, but I am going to try to solve problems. I am going to have daily inputs that I get to deal with as dad. And then how do I get to present myself to my kids? Because that's always our number one obligation, in my opinion, is to present ourselves in the best way possible and show them, real moments, how we're going through things, the diligence, the disciplines that we have to engage in some of those things, but also, just to let them know that sometimes things are tough, sometimes things are hard, and they're going to take some time to get through. And again, yeah, just handling inputs and what output I get to give to my kids.
I like that. That was probably the most well thought out reply that I've gotten. You gave a really, really, really good answer. You know what? First you start talking about chemistry, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to we're gonna have to dumb this down for some people. But then you brought it
I
back.
wanted to
You brought
divert
it
from
back.
that as quickly as I could.
No, but that was really good, man. That was really good. I can't say that I disagree at all. I like all of that. That was really good. Okay, so you're gonna have the newsletter, you're gonna have podcasts at some point, you're gonna have the YouTube channel, you got the Instagram page, and all of that's gonna be geared towards fathers. But what's the overarching, what's the message that you want fathers to hear? What is it, like, if you could narrow it down to one thing, what is that message you want them to hear?
Maximize the phase of life or the phase of fatherhood that you're in. And the first phase of that is acknowledging and being aware of where you're at. Maybe it's pre-fatherhood, and we're getting somehow to connect me and you to people that are not fathers and they made it this far through the podcast. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe this gets clipped out into an Instagram clip, but acknowledging where you're at, being aware of that, and then trying to be the best father in that phase that you can. And that takes, again, awareness of where you're at, and then also perspective on where you want to be, right? So it's like, I got to know where I'm at. I got to know where I want to be and where I want to go in the future, and just maximizing those areas. And that's why it's always in this thing of fatherhood and creating a roadmap for fathers or a book to follow is almost impossible, because, me, Cliff, with 4-year-old and 2-year-old kid that I had, you had 2 kids at one time that were 4 and 2, and they were 2 years apart, but your life was probably completely different at that phase of life than where I was at, right? We can both be aware that we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, but all the other factors around that are completely different. And, where we go trajectory wise and where we want to head off into the future can be different as well. So yeah, be aware of where you're at in life, and be in fatherhood, and then be aware of or have the perspective to know where you're going to be in the future in fatherhood.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so the podcast is taking off, the social media is taking off, the YouTube is taking off, and then you decide, you know what, I'm gonna scale it back, and I want to just put a message out there for 2 people, right? Not all the dads, not all the people that are gonna eventually be listening to you after your interview on Good Morning America, but just 2 very important people, and those are your kids. What's the message you want them to hear?
That's a tough one. I had really quick answers for the other ones, and my mind's going a few different ways right now. But I think for both of the kids, the message is to take care of your responsibilities. If you're going to have, I've been able to be blessed with the 2 kids that I have. So when I, talk to them, or I get to share a message with them, it's like, hey, you're my priority. You're my responsibility. Is my job and duty to take care of you now and to set you up for success in the future. So yeah, it's just, pay attention to your responsibilities, focus in on where you are right now, and always have those plans for the path forward.
I like that too, man. Look, you're 3 for 3 right now. You're batting 1,000. I like it. I like it. Look, man, I really
I
appreciate,
appreciate it.
as I said before, yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, right? I know you've got other things to do, and as a father who's busy, I know that time is extremely valuable. So I appreciate you taking the time, and squeezing this one in. I know my schedule's crazy, and I'm going to be gone for a while. So I appreciate you taking the time, man, to get this done, and to share with us your journey and the things that you're doing, and the stuff that you're building. And so if guys want to find you, obviously they've got to go to the Reliable Dad on Instagram. But if they want to reach out to you, they want to subscribe to the newsletter, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so the best way to do that is just through Instagram right now. Just go The Reliable Dad on Instagram. I've got all the links there in my bio to either subscribe to the newsletter, can reach out and DM me. Right now, that's the best way to get in contact. So if you want to collaborate, you want to share some content, you just want to reach out and share a story or 2 with me, you can do that through Instagram Messenger. And then, thereliabledad.com. Thereliabledad.com is my website as well that you can visit. That's where the newsletter is hosted, and you can subscribe there as well.